Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Giselle, and yes, you read the title right. It is How I Got Married in 2 weeks. Crazy, right? Who gets married in 2 weeks? Well, that's none other than yours truly. So, let me just dive right in. There's always a backstory to everything, and I'll explain why my husband and I decided to get married in 2 weeks. It's a little bit depressing, but it's something that we needed to do to make sure that we had everybody there who we really wanted to be there. In 2014, beginning of 2014, my husband and I had put down payments on basically everything: our venue, our DJ, photographer, our photo booth, our everything. We had everything set, and we were gonna get married in August of 2015 of this year. And we were all really excited for it. Everybody was excited. My father's father came to visit us in the middle of June, maybe towards the end of June, the last week, and we discussed with him. I wasn't that close to him in the beginning, and we were starting to form a relationship and our bond, and starting to get to know each other more. Because, like I said, with my mother's set of parents, they raised my brother and I since we were little, and we were extremely, 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 extremely close with them. And my dad's set of parents, his mother passed when I was really young. My brother might have just been born. I was just 3 years old or 2 years old, so I wasn't given the privilege of knowing her. Grandfather, my father's father, and I didn't form such a close relationship when I was younger. And due to people, and everybody has their family's problems, and so it is what it is. So since I think it was 23 when he came to visit, in 24, we started to form a much closer relationship with each other. Or we're starting to form a close relationship. And he would talk to me, or I would mention the wedding, or he would mention the wedding and ask me how everything was going. And he was generally excited. He was truly excited to come to the wedding in 2015. The last week of June, he was saying how he wanted to start saving up money for the wedding and start saving up money for the plane tickets, because from South America to the States it is expensive, and wanted to give my husband and I something. And I told him he didn't have to give us anything, and he was determined to give us a little bit of something. For me to have him there with his wife was all I really needed. I didn't want an elaborate gift, nor something small. I just wanted them happy. I wanted my father happy, to see his father growing a relationship with his daughter. So that's what my main concern was: just see my dad happy, and have my grandfather there and his wife there, just enjoying themselves and having a good time at the wedding. So then in June, after we had that conversation, my mother's mother, who is the last parent that she has, and what I was just speaking about, my father's father, was the last parent he has. We found out on my husband's birthday in 2014 that my grandmother had a stroke. Due to the stroke, they found out that she has terminal cancer. She was the rock. She was the magnet that pulled everyone together. She was the glue that held everyone together. She was just an amazing person. She never saw the bad in anybody. You could have been the worst person in the world, and she will find the good in you. That's how amazing she was. She was my grandma. She raised my brother and I since we were little. Her and my mother's father, her husband, my grandparents raised us. My mom and dad worked crazy hours. My dad worked 7 days a week. My mom worked crazy hours. They busted their ass to give my brother and I and my grandparents what we needed, what we wanted to eat. We would go out. They did what was needed to be done to support us, to support their family. And we wouldn't be half of where we are now if it wasn't for my parents and my grandparents watching us. So to hear that, to hear that the person that took care of everybody and watched everybody and gave advice to everybody, and she was the head of the house. She was the root of the family. My grandmother was 1 out of 6. She was the oldest. She had 5 kids of her own. She was everything. She was everyone's everything. So to hear the news that she had terminal cancer and that she only had 6 months to live was the hardest thing I've heard to this date. I couldn't. It was hard. My brother and I wouldn't have what we have, wouldn't know what we know. We wouldn't be who we are today as adults if it wasn't for these amazing people helping us and raising us. So my grandmother meant a lot to us, especially my brother and I. She was our second mother. She was our everything. My husband, it was a big birthday for him. And no mind, no say, no nothing, no cake, no literally nothing, because it happened on his birth date. Not a word. He is such an amazing man. He wasn't concerned about himself, wasn't concerned about what he missed. Nobody said happy birthday or whatever the case may be. He was more concerned about me. He was more concerned about my mother, especially more concerned about my grandmother, make sure she was okay. So I have an amazing husband who cares for my family a great deal. And then about a week later from finding out about my grandmother, my father's father, who was still in the States visiting, passed away suddenly. They always say, God gives you what you can handle. And he knows more than anybody that's all I could handle. I couldn't handle anymore. There was no way. So having my grandmother be diagnosed with cancer, and then having my father's father pass within a week of each other, I was devastated. I was thrown back. I was just, it was hard. It was really hard. Luckily, I have an amazing support group. That time, I had to be strong for my parents, and they obviously were strong for my brother and I. Everybody supported each other. My husband was, helped me out on days that I was really sad, and I didn't want to cry in front of my mother. I didn't want to cry in front of my father. And, my husband was just there. After everything happened, about a week, maybe a week and a half after my grandfather passed, I told my husband that I could not be able to have a wedding and not have my grandmother be there. I just couldn't. She used to always tell me that she wanted to see me graduate and that she wanted to see me get married and at a church and the whole 9 yards. I just couldn't lose her too and not have her be there. It just hurt to think about not having her there. And he knew, and he wanted my grandmother there. To have my husband want my grandmother there too was just even more. Like, I needed that to happen. So with everything going on, my husband saw how upset I was, and I told him that I wasn't going to be able to get married in 2015. I wouldn't be emotionally, physically, mentally ready to take on every little detail for the wedding and still be mourning my grandmother. I spoke to my husband. I told him that I wanted to know what he thought. Obviously, I didn't want to just make a decision by myself. That's not how it works here. So he said, if that's what you want to do, and that's what you feel that you should do, I'm more than okay with doing it. There was concern money, like where we're going to get it, how we're going to save it, because of short notice and because we paid all our vendors, and we were paying them still for the wedding if they would push everything back. We ended up getting the most amazing vendors who want to take care of their clients. We weren't trying to get out of the contract. We weren't trying to do anything like that. We just truly needed help in the situation with pushing it back. Majority of the vendors only pushed back and postpone the dates about 6 months. We were asking them to postpone it for a year. So they went above and beyond what they should have done, really, and extended it for a year. So we ended up pushing everything back 1 year. Once we decided that that's what we wanted to do, and the vendors agreed to postponing the wedding date a whole year, we spoke to my mother and my father and spoke to my in-laws and said, this is our plan. My mother obviously was on board 100%, so was my dad. His parents, we had to explain the situation, and they said, understand that not everybody's going to show up because it is extremely short notice. And we said, that's not a problem. We plan on having a big wedding anyways. And they were on board. They understood the situation. They knew how much she meant to us, and they were more than gladly on board with everything. So then began the word of mouth. We told the people that we wanted, obviously the closest family members, and we only wanted something small. Mind you, my family is huge. My husband's wedding guest list was about 70 to 80 people. Mine was the other 200 and change. I have a huge family. Like I said, my grandmother's 1 out of 6. My father's 1 out of 7, and my mother's 1 out of 5. And each of them have their own kids. So, they have either 4 kids, 2 kids, 3 kids, and then their kids now have kids. So my family just multiplies, so we have so many people in our family, and it just grows and grows. I couldn't invite everybody. There was no way I was going to fit everybody in my house because that was the original plan, to have everybody come to my house. We would order catering, have a small reception at the house and the backyard, and that would be it. We started telling everybody, and then we started getting calls and texts of, where is it going to be? Are you going to have it at your house? Where's the place? Where's the church? Where's this? Where's that? And then we realized how many people were actually going to show up. And we were like, oh boy, we really need to figure out where we're going to do this, because they won't fit in the house. They won't fit in the backyard. We had a little over 100 people show up. It's crazy. In 2 weeks, more than 100 people. Mind you, a lot of it was my family, but the majority is my family to begin with. So it was just crazy how many people showed up. We went to my Aunt Susie, who brought over Father DeMarco, and who spoke to my grandmother and gave her the blessings and her confessions, and said, we want to get married in 2 weeks. She said, okay, this is what you need to do to get married in 2 weeks. Speak to your church. If your church cannot assist you in any way, let me know. So I call up my church and I explain the situation, and they're more than willing to help. The problem is that they have a lot of prerequisites that need to be done prior to you getting married at a Catholic church. They are questionnaires that you need to fill out to make sure that you both understand what you're getting into. And then there's a pre-cana, which is an activity where you go for either a weekend, 2 days, or 2 days at different times of the week, or 1 weekend, another weekend, or 1 whole day. They didn't have anything open. So we were like, what are we going to do? We really need to find something that's open, and we need to do it now. Because we wanted to get married at church, this is something that I want to get married in the Catholic Church. And I want to get married with my grandmother seeing me get married in the Catholic Church. Once we found out, and that my church couldn't do that, I called my Aunt Susie so quickly, and I was like, yeah, this is what they're telling me. I don't know what else to do, and I really don't want to get married by justice of peace. She said, that may be an idea. We'll figure it out. So she says she's going to call me back. She calls me about a couple days later, but before that, I have to run and get a marriage license. Now, marriage license takes about a week to do, so we ran, and you have to make an appointment for these things. You can't just show up and be like, hey, by the way, I want. No, you have to make an appointment. So we made an appointment, and we went to our appointment. It was earlier in the morning, and filled out the form, us getting our marriage license. Then the food, had it catered. We gave them my address at first, my house address, because that's what we figured we were going to do it. But once we started getting these phone calls and asking questions, and then realizing how many people were coming, we I called them back and I was like, this is not the location. It's actually going to be at the hall at the church, my original church. After that was all done, I went and I had to go find a dress because you can't get married in jeans. So I been to so many places already looking for dresses and I never found anything I liked, and it was just never working out the way it should have been. So praying and hoping, I ran to David's bridal, and I went with my mother and my best friend. This is the first time we're going all together, and that same day I found a dress. It fit the budget. I was able to get 2 veils, a blush veil and a cathedral veil that I really wanted. And I ended up getting a headpiece, and it all fit in the budget and it was perfect. The alterations were just minor details that had to be done. Obviously, I had the dress rushed to get altered because I only had 2 weeks. At this point, actually, I only had a little more than a week. And yeah, I had to get everything ready. So once we had that done, I ended up finding out, how many people, like I said, were coming. And they said, okay, that's not a problem. We'll serve for X amount of people. And you just let me know when and where, and we'll be there for that date. And I said, that's not a problem. I gave them the date. Like I said, my in-laws understood what we were doing and why we were doing it. Not everybody from their family came, which is fine because they don't know my grandmother. They understand why we're doing it. People understood why they weren't invited. We just couldn't have everybody there. So their family understood. His family understood. My family, a lot of them showed up. A majority of them, well, not a majority of them, but a decent amount of them showed up because they knew my grandmother. They knew, she was the rock for my mother's side of the family. So majority of my mother's side of the family showed up. And it was crazy how many people came. It was just so blessed to have these people in my lives who showed up and took care of us in that day. So once everything was done, then we had to get everything done for the church. I called the church and I told the church, I need to rent your hall because I belonged to that church at that point still. They said that's not a problem. You pay X, Y, and Z, and you have that date. Luckily, the 3rd was open for that date, so we set it. Then we had to do the prerequisites for the church to get married in a church. So now, because my church didn't take me, they had to sign me over, basically. They had to let us go from the church so that my aunt's church could take us in and we can get married there. We got the letter from my church who said that that's not, they're letting us go, that's not a problem. And we sent it over and we went over to my aunt's church, who they were so nice. The minute we went there, they knew that we had a timeline and we had to get things done at a certain speed. The first day that we got there, they gave us the questionnaire sheets because one, you have to do an interview with the priest or the father that's there, and you have to sit down and do the interview, and they have to talk to you individually and to your spouse individually, and then talk together what your plans are, if you plan on having children, which is what the Catholic Church wants, for more Catholics. But they were really nice about everything. And after we had our little interview and talk with the priest and father, he asked us why we were doing it, and we told him the story, and obviously that we are planning on getting married, and having a bigger wedding later on, but our main reason right now is so that she could be present, and it's not because of anything crazy. We're not pregnant, we're not expecting, we're not, we're just not doing it for beneficial reasons. We truly love each other and we want to get married, and the reason why we're doing it fast was because she is sick. So after the interview, they gave us a questionnaire, which is a huge, 50 questions, 100 questions, something like that, of everything, and it's stated in different ways, and same question in different ways, and you had to fill it out, and then you give it back. Once we gave that done, we were done with that, we set up the Bricana. Now the Bricana is where you have to go, either it's one full day 2 weekends or 1 whole weekend. So we did the 1 full day because that's the only one we had time for, and 2, it was the only one that was available. So once we did the pre-canna, we set up the date, put our names in, sent the money forms over, whatever we needed to do because you have to pay for it. We get everything ready. During that week, I went for my last fitting. And I think, what else did I do? I'm trying to think of what else I did that day. I think that was about it. And then, meanwhile, my friends are the most amazing people in the world. Meanwhile, I'm doing all of this. They went out and they bought bulk flowers so that they can make my bouquet, their bouquets, the boutonnieres and the corsages for the mothers and my grandmother. They did such an amazing job. These girls are not florists. One's a bread maker and one's a cake decorator. They work in kitchens, not flowers, but they did an amazing job. My bouquet had little beads of little like sparkle in it. The wrap was a sparkled wrap. It was beautiful. They did such an amazing job that I can't thank them enough. Words cannot describe how grateful I am to have these girls in my life. They're my sisters. They're not even best friends, they're my sisters. So because I had a wedding party of 7, 8 bridesmaids and 8 groomsmen, including myself and my husband, not including flower girls or ring bearer. So because I had so many, I had to tell half of them, I'm sorry you can't be in this wedding, but you will be in the next wedding, and they know that, so they were okay with that. They knew the situation. Everyone knew what was going on. So they were more than okay with that. We ended up going and looking for dresses for the bridesmaids because obviously they need dresses too. I don't know if it was somebody up above looking down on us. I don't know what it was. We were able to find 4, which is exactly what I had in the bridal party. 4 of the same color dresses. They're not the same size girls. I don't know how it happened, or like I said, I don't know who was watching out for us that day, or those 2 weeks, and now, I don't know who was out there looking out over us, because each girl was a different size. Either they had a wider back, either they had smaller chest, bigger chest, smaller back, whatever the case was. They were short, they were tall. These girls found their dresses, perfectly found their dresses, and I was so blown away at how these dresses were there were only 4. There was no more in back stock. There was no more that I could order. These were discontinued dresses. They were done. That was it. Only 4 dresses. I didn't know what to do. I was literally taken back, and I was praying that the one dress fit my niece, because I had my sister-in-law, my niece, my 2 best friends. I was praying that the one fit my niece. Apparently the size on the ticket was the wrong size of the dress, and the dress fit my niece perfectly. The other size for my sister-in-law was too big of a size, but I think it was sized wrong also because my sister-in-law is tiny, and it fit her perfectly. The other 2 dresses fit my best friends perfectly, and it complemented their figures in all of them. So I was like, oh my goodness, what are the chances that I get 4 dresses for the 4 girls that I have, and they're the only 4 left. There's none even in any store. I went to 4 different stores, and they didn't have that dress. So I was truly, truly blessed with that too, unbelievably. Then comes pre-canna. So the day comes when we go. My husband and I go, and it turns out that this pre-canna is only in Spanish. My husband is not Spanish. He's the complete opposite of Spanish. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? He's not going to understand a word. They're going to kick us out. I was like, we need to get this pre-canna. We need to get the diploma that they give you at the end, or else you can't get married. And we were freaking out. So we went in there, and he pretended to have a sore throat where he couldn't talk, because if you speak to him in Spanish, he understands you. But if you speak slowly, he'll get at least 70% of what you told him, maybe 80. But he can't write it and he can't speak it. We were freaking out, so we didn't know what to do. So he pretended he had a sore throat and he couldn't speak. But because he was pretending to be sick and couldn't speak, he's really bad at pretending, because he just gives like this really pouty face, like he doesn't want to be there, because he was pretending to feel under the weather. So the lady off the bat was like, she knew it's a couple that does the pre-cana. They tell you how to, resolve a couple issues, how to go about it, what to look forward to, what will happen, what may not happen. They give you their life story, and they tell you from what to expect in a marriage, and their experiences and their disagreements and whatever the case may be. So she automatically off the bat knew. I don't know how she knew. She knew that my husband did not speak a word of Spanish. She took me into the back room, and she was just like, your fiance doesn't speak Spanish, does he? And I was like, oh no, they're gonna kick us out. And I was like, no, he doesn't. She goes, I'm sorry, you guys have to leave. And I had to plea and beg, and I was like, please let us stay. This is why we are doing this. This is the reasons why you guys are the only ones available at such short notice. Please let us stay. I will explain it all to him as we go along. Please. And she's like, well, I don't like your husband's attitude, the way he came in, like he didn't want to be here. And I had to tell her, I was like, that's not his attitude by all means. He was just pretending to have a sore throat that he didn't have to speak in Spanish, and all he had to do was listen. She's like, you guys, and I go, this, and I explained to her what was going on, why we wanted to do it, why we were really hoping to stay. And she's like, okay. She goes outside, calls my husband over, and she's like, come here, give me a hug. And I was like, oh my god, he's not gonna want to hug her, who knows, a stranger. But luckily my husband gives bear hugs. He's just that kind of person that likes to give hugs. He gives good hugs. So he hugged her, and she was like, that's what I'm talking about. See, now smile and make it like you want to be here. And he's like, no, I do want to be here. I'm just a little under the weather. And she's like, I know. And he's like, oh, okay. And so they let us stay. And amazing, because they obviously didn't have to let us stay. They shouldn't have let us stay. But she was such a nice person. The couple was really nice. These people that were there, they're like 8 other couples there, and they were all a little bilingual. Majority were all bilingual. Some of them only spoke majority Spanish, but they understood English, so they spoke to my husband and us in the group, half in Spanish, half in English, a little bit mixed. And the husband of the lady who was running the course spoke to my husband in English, like when it came to certain things, and she spoke to him in English. And there's times when they make you split up the women on one side, the men on the other side, and then you have to share what you wrote down. These strangers were helping my husband out and talking to him in English and reading him the questions that were written in Spanish so that he could answer them. They didn't have to do that. They wanted to help him. They were truly being genuine. And it was so nice to see people still like that out there. So we got through the course. We got our diploma. We were ecstatic. And then I get a phone call during the middle of the course. And I didn't answer, obviously, because we were in the middle of the course and you're not supposed to have your phone on. None of that. So once we got our diploma, I get the voicemail saying that the caterers are at the church hall ready to drop the food off. And I'm like, I call them back. I go, what do you mean you guys are ready to drop the food off? I asked you guys to be there for the 3rd. It is not the 3rd. The 3rd is next week. They were like, no, we're here. And I was like, what do you mean you're there? And I'm freaking out at this point. And he was like, no, we're here, you said for this date. And I go, no, I said the 3rd. And then, they took the food back. Then I spoke to them. I've always ordered food from this place, and they do an amazing job cooking. Their food is amazing. Everybody, my engagement party, my brother's party, mine, they do such a good job with the food that we always order from them. They know us. They know my husband and I when we go in. So they're like, oh, you know what? Don't worry about it. It was our don't worry about it. It's our mistake. Somebody must have put in the wrong date. We'll take care of it. Don't you worry about it. We'll see you on the 3rd. And I was like, oh my goodness. Thank God. So we had no problem with that. Then my best friend, Jess, did my wedding cake. We were there the day before on the 2nd, setting up the hall at night for the party. Other than getting a couple of bottles, we got our alcohol from one of the bars that we know. We know the owner, and he gave us a great deal on champagne and alcohol. He goes, anything that's not unopened, because we bought cases of a lot of things. He goes, anything that's not unopened, just bring it back. I have no problem. As long as it's not opened, the seal isn't broken, I have no problem taking it back. So, other than a couple bottles of red wine because we're not red wine drinkers, we kept everything else because we're not going to send it back. We felt bad, and 2, we had people over. So we, to have everybody here and celebrating and continuing the party, we decided to keep some of the alcohol. But, I did my own hair, I did my own makeup. My Aunt Susie and my uncle, my father's brother, they did an amazing job with everything. She helped me out so much. She did a reading at the Mass. She bought a photographer for us because we did not. We weren't planning on doing that. We weren't planning on getting a photographer. We were just going to use the pictures that people took with their cell phones. That's what we were going to do. But she's like, no, you're going to do a wedding. You're going to do it right. She bought a photographer for us, which was amazing. Again, words cannot describe how grateful I am. There's no monetary value to, what I would do for my best friends and for my aunt and her husband, who bent over backwards to help us. There's nothing. So, because of her, we got an amazing photographer who did our pictures, and I was able to do our invitations on Shutterfly. Now, that's my husband, me, and my grandmother. Sorry, it's a little blurry, but that's my family. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have a picture like that. I think that's such a beautiful picture with all the trees in the back. And again, my husband and I. And obviously, this is dedicated to my grandmother, so I was able to get this amazing picture. It's me and my grandmother. And it was dedicated to her. So I wrote, "We love you," on the back. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have these kinds of pictures to show and to reminisce over and enjoy, and so without their support, it's just a lot of this wouldn't have happened. And yeah, that's how I got married in 2 weeks. It's crazy. I don't know how to thank my family and my friends and my husband for giving me something that they will never know how amazing it was for me to have my grandmother there. She was my everything, so to have her there was really, really, really meaningful. Yeah, it was crazy, but I had fun. I know she had fun, and she actually thought that we didn't really get married and we were just doing it to have her there. And then she found out, I think 2 weeks later after the wedding, that we really did get married. And she was ecstatic, and she thought it was great. I just can't thank my family enough for showing up. And my family bought gifts, and I told them all not to do that because we were having another wedding, and I didn't want them giving two gifts. Like, that's crazy. But they still bought gifts, and they they did a lot. I had my cousin DJ'd. I hooked him up to my hotspot on my phone because the church didn't have Wi-Fi. My uncle brought a speaker. Like, it was truly a group effort into making it what it was. You know, I had my bouquet toss. I had my first dance. I had my father-daughter dance. My husband had his mother-son dance, and he had the garter toss. We had the cutting of the cake. We had favors. We literally had everything a wedding is supposed to have. We had fun. We had good food. We had good people. We had a good time. It was just truly, truly a blessing to have these people in my lives, and I cannot thank them enough for being part of such a special day for me. But, yep, that is it. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have a story like mine, please share, and we will talk. And if you want to talk, you can talk to me. It's hard to go through stuff like this by yourself, and it's nice to know there's other people out there that can at least understand what you're going through. So, yeah, you can comment down below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a little long. I hope you have an amazing week. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at GiselleMB, and I will see you guys later. Bye.